What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We are heading into week 3 already, and it's time for my updated top 25. Yes, this season, it's going to fly by. It is going to fly by. It's like it just started, and before you know it, we'll be halfway through the season. Then it'll be rivalry weekend, and then we'll be in bowl season. It always goes by so fast. And this is very tough to do. There's a reason why I've said you really should not have rankings, top 25 rankings this early in the season, because there's just still so many question marks. For example, look at Alabama and Texas. Is Alabama that bad, or is Texas a top 10 team? We just don't know at this point until you get, and I've said this, I always say this, you need about 4 games. Then you can really tell where these teams are. But I'm going to give it my best, do my best here. And yeah, you have to, again, with my top 25, I'm only looking at what we have seen this year. I'm trying to get rid of all those preseason expectations, but you have to look at a few things. Like, there are things you know about these teams. For example, Bryce Young, you know, is an elite quarterback. He's one of the best players in the country. You know, things like that. You know Alabama is still a good team, but they're not, I'll go ahead and tell you right now, they're not going to be in my top 5 because of the way they played against Texas, and also another thing. So we'll get to Alabama, we'll get to all the teams here. Let's just start at the bottom. And it's also hard because there are a bunch of teams that I want to put in the top 25 that I can't fit in there because we only have 25 spots. But I think there are about 10 teams that deserve recognition, and we'll talk about those teams as well. So let's get it started here, 21 through 25. So Syracuse, I've got them at number 25. So what helps Syracuse this week is the fact that Louisville just went out and beat UCF on the road. That makes that win look really good, and they got an easy win this past weekend. So Syracuse, to me, is a top 25 team. I didn't expect them to be a top 25 team. I don't know that they're going to finish in the top 25, but based off of the first 2 games, what we have seen from all the teams so far, this is a top 25 team. Marshall at number 24. They just beat Notre Dame. They had an easy win in their first game. They are 2-0. I've got them ranked. And you could make an argument, and I'm okay with this argument if this is how you want to look at it. You can make an argument that Marshall should be ranked ahead of Ohio State. I mean, you could. Both teams beat up on an easy opponent, and then you look at their games against Notre Dame. Marshall went on the road and beat Notre Dame. Ohio State beat them at home. Marshall was winning this game, really controlling this game. Ohio State had to come from behind. So yeah, you could make an argument that Marshall should be ranked ahead of Ohio State. Does that mean Marshall should be in the top 10, or Ohio State should be here in the 20s? I mean, you can make that argument, but that's where I come back to what I was saying earlier. We know a certain amount about these teams. We know these players that are back from Ohio State last year are really good. We know the talent level that's on this roster, and so because of that, it does kind of sway these rankings just a little bit. But I'm trying to mostly just put it off of on the field performance. But again, you cannot completely ignore just the talent on these teams. Kansas State at number 23. They are 2-0. Put a beat down on Missouri. I don't think Missouri's very good, but still, the way they won convincingly against an SEC team, impressive. They are 2-0. They are ranked for me. Penn State took care of business against, I believe it was Ohio. But again, their big win was the road win against Purdue. That's why Penn State is ranked. They've got a big test against Auburn coming up on Saturday. Florida State ranked at number 21. Is LSU good? Is LSU bad? We don't know. I'm going to give them credit, though, because I thought they looked like a good team. Their pass rush was really good. Jordan Travis had shown a lot of improvement. So I'm going back to that game and saying that, yes, Florida State is a top 25 team. I don't think they're even ranked in the AP and coaches polls, which is surprising. It's a little bit surprising. Let's move on here. 16 through 20, Oklahoma State there at 2-0. Kind of a slow start against Arizona State. I think they were actually down, 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. This is a team that I think still has some question marks, and I'm not ready to bump them up into the top 10 like the AP and coaches polls. I think they are in the top 10. I'm not even sure. I didn't even look at the AP and coaches polls are so bad. I didn't even spend but a few seconds looking at them and like, wow, this is ridiculous. Why is Texas A&M ranked? If Texas A&M is ranked, you have to rank Appalachian State ahead of them, and you've got to rank North Carolina, who beat App State, ahead of them. These rankings made absolutely no sense. I've got Michigan State at number 19. Easy win for them. They've got a big test against Washington coming up. Michigan State hasn't looked great, but they've looked good. I need to see them play a quality opponent. If they beat Washington, they might be back in my top 10. And that's another thing. I don't just move teams up and down. It's a brand new top 25 every week. I throw everything out, start over, look at what I have seen, and re-rank the teams. Oklahoma, number 18, they started off really slow. Question marks for Oklahoma. We'll see when they play. Look, Nebraska, I know, has struggled, but this is a good test for Oklahoma. We'll see what they can do against Nebraska. Nebraska's still a talented team, and that should be a pretty good game, I would think. Now, Miami at number 17, they got off to a slow start against Southern Miss. Really played much better in the second half, but they're sitting there at 17. Need to see them play a quality opponent. They'll get their chance against Texas A&M. Tennessee at number 16. So this is how the dominoes will fall here. At first, you say, well, Tennessee went on the road and they beat Pitt. That's a great win. Well, Pitt barely beat West Virginia, who just lost to Kansas. So there are so many factors in this. That all of a sudden, that win over Pitt doesn't look so good. If West Virginia had beat Kansas 50-0, Tennessee would probably be in my top 10, and Pittsburgh would still be ranked. But with such a small sample size, we are just still trying to figure out all these teams, and one game can change the perception for 2 or 3 teams sometimes when you're this early in the season. That's why Tennessee is still just at number 16, despite a very good win, I thought, on the road at Pittsburgh. 11 through 15, I got Baylor at 15. They lose to BYU. Those two teams look really, really even. I'm not going to penalize Baylor much for going on the road and losing in overtime. BYU, I think, should be just ahead of them. Now, should these two teams be higher or lower? You could make an argument that these two teams should be in the top 10, or maybe they should be in the 20s. I kind of went in the middle. Again, we don't have a big sample size, don't really know a lot about all these teams, so I'm just going to put them right there in the middle. Texas at number 13. I didn't have them ranked last week, but they did what they did against Alabama. I still believe Alabama to be a really good team. We know that they're a talented team. We know the roster talent is there, and they've got one of the best coaches in the country, and they've got probably the best quarterback. Alabama's still a good team, and Texas's defense just, wow. I was so impressed with them. And I've noticed that really across college football, the defensive lines in a lot of these games have just been winning. They have just been winning. The defensive lines have been better than the offensive lines. And if you can get pressure to the quarterback, and if you can stop the run, you can shut down an offense. That's what it's all about, the defensive line. And that's the biggest key, is the line of scrimmage. And that's what I've noticed so far this season. As good as Bryce Young is, he didn't do a whole lot in this game because he was constantly under pressure. And it also didn't help that the receivers couldn't get open. Texas's secondary played really well in this game as well. But where do we put Texas? So with Quinn Ewers, I think this is a top 10 team right now. Without him, probably closer to 20. I kind of went in the middle here again at number 13 because Ewers is going to be back, and it's hard to, where do you put them in that scenario? Well, what's fair? Do you rank them when they're at their best or when they're not? I just kind of went in the middle, put them at number 13. Utah at 12, they bounced back in a nice way. Florida at 11, tough loss to Kentucky. That's going to drop them out of the top 10. These two teams, though, to me are very even. I'm keeping them together in the rankings. You can make an argument for them a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but I think Florida should be ahead of Utah, and I think these two teams, again, should be ranked right next to each other, just like BYU and Baylor. All right, let's move into the top 10. You guys are not going to like this top 10, a lot of you, but based off of what we have seen so far this season, not how good the teams are going to be or have the potential to be or what we thought about them coming in the preseason, coming into this season, this is where I believe the teams should be ranked. So we go to 6 through 10. Cincinnati at 1-1. They bounced back this week, took care of business, beat up on an easy opponent. But they played Arkansas pretty tough, and you haven't seen Arkansas yet because they're in my top 5. And we'll talk about Arkansas in a minute. But Cincinnati, I believe this is a really good team. Do I think they're the 10th best team in the country? Probably not. But based off of what I have seen this year for sure, I think that they have looked like a top 10, top 15 team. Clemson at number 9. Their defense didn't look all that great against, I believe it was Furman, which is, it's just, you don't want to take too much away from these cupcake games. Teams, they're going to hold back. They're not going to play their starters as much. It's hard to really take a whole lot from that. And what I did see against Georgia Tech was a defense that I think can be one of the best in the country. We'll see what they do when they play another quality opponent. I'm really curious to see that. Offense, didn't play great again, but DJ was pretty solid for them. Mississippi State at number 8. Look, this team's got 2 quality wins right now. A win over Memphis, a game where they pretty much dominated, and then they go out west on the road and beat an Arizona team who just beat San Diego State. I think this is a top 10 team right now. That doesn't mean they're going to stay there. I might have them losing to LSU and then dropping some. But based off of those first 2 games, yeah, the Bulldogs deserve, in my opinion, to be a top 10 team. There's Alabama and Ohio State at number 7. So for Ohio State, the issue I have is the fact that Notre Dame looks pretty bad. And that win all of a sudden does not look very good. If Notre Dame had just taken care of business against Marshall, Ohio State would be number 2. I'll just go ahead and tell you right now, they'd be the number 2 team for me. So it's not even really about Ohio State. It's about their opponent. It's about Notre Dame and the fact that Ohio State, struggled in that game. They were down in the second half, and they weren't overly dominant this past weekend against Arkansas State. Kind of a slow start. If they had went out and won 70-0, then I think you could put Ohio State back in the top 5. But based off of what we've seen, I don't think so. I think right now this team should be at number 7, Alabama at number 6. So a couple of things happen here. First of all, there was the struggle against Texas, and we've talked about that game. Alabama definitely has some issues with their wide receivers and their offensive line, and even their secondary. They were getting beat some in this game. Also, Utah State, who we thought that was a good quality win. Utah State just went out and got beat. I mean, beat bad, like 28 points to an FCS team. So all of a sudden, you can't give them credit for that win. And based off of these 2 games, Alabama, I don't think, should be in the top 5. Do they have the potential to be a top 5 team? Are they one of the top 5 most talented teams? Are they going to be in the top 5 at the end of the year? Sure, very possible, but based off of these first 2 weeks, I don't think so. Let's go to my top 5. I've got Kentucky at number 5 at 2-0. Very impressed with their win on the road at Florida. Florida is a proven team. We've already seen Florida beat Utah. We know that Florida is a good team. I'm not saying we know they're a great team, but we know they are a quality team. Kentucky went in there, beat them, and looked like the better team. I mean, they looked like the better team. I know the first game for them wasn't great, but they did pull away in the second half in that game. Will Levis is looking really good. Defense is making some very timely plays for them. Despite some mistakes, some bad snaps and some things that went against them, they still wound up winning this game by two possessions. So yes, Kentucky right now should be in the top 5 in my opinion. I've got them at number 5. Arkansas just ahead of them at number 4. Really strong resume. They have a win over Cincinnati and an SEC win over South Carolina. This team, I mean, you go down the list. KJ Jefferson playing great. They're running the football great. Offensive line playing great. The wide receivers playing better than I expected. The run defense really good. But then you go to that pass defense, and they have really struggled there, and that's going to be the issue for Arkansas. And that's why I don't think they're going to stay in the top 5, because that's going to get exposed when they play a really good passing team. I mean, I think Spencer Rattler threw for like 300 yards or close to that in that game. He really had a pretty good day when he had time to throw. So Arkansas secondary has to get better if they're going to be a top 5 team at the end of the year, because they will have some big-time tests coming up. But right now, based off of all those other things I talked about, this team looks really good, really dangerous. Maybe a big threat to Alabama in the SEC West. I've got them at number 4. I've got Michigan at number 3. Michigan would be number 2 for me if I had just seen them play a quality team. That's kind of what I'm waiting on. But they've been absolutely dominant in their first 2 games. And now that they have J.J. McCarthy as the starter, you can see what this offense has the potential to do. They have a ton of talent on that side of the ball. And the defense, again, we need to see them tested, but what we've seen so far, it's been very strong. I mean, they've pretty much only given up points late in the game, garbage time, second half against these cupcake teams. But I think USC, for me, has to be number 2 because they had a really good win over Stanford, who I believe to be a quality opponent. They went out and dominated that game. I know the score wound up being kind of close, but that was just because of a couple of late touchdowns by Stanford. USC, their offense, it's very, very good. It has a chance to be one of the best offenses, I think, in the country. Might be the best offense. Right now, I think they're playing better than Ohio State on that side of the ball, and I don't even think it's a question. And the defense is playing pretty well. They made some big stops, had a big stop on that early drive in the red zone. They're getting turnovers, interceptions. USC is playing great football through 2 games. Can they sustain this? We'll find out. But it reminds me of one of the older Oklahoma teams under Lincoln Riley, a team that's going to score a lot of points. Defense will be good enough to where they could be in the college football playoff at the end of the season. Georgia at number 1 didn't look great this week, but I think it was 30-0 at halftime. They were not looking to run up the score or anything. We know what this team's capable of just based off of that Oregon game, and this is, to me, clearly the number 1 team in the country. I don't see how you can even make an argument for anyone else. So, like I said, I'm not predicting that this will be the top 25 at the end of the year, but based off of what we have seen in these 2 weeks, I believe this to be a very fair top 25. Definitely some room to move teams up and down. Plenty of arguments that you can make. I understand that. It's early, and we really shouldn't be ranking teams. But some other teams I just wanted to give some recognition to because I would like to rank them. I think that they are quality teams that have an argument. I think Ole Miss, so they dropped out just because just haven't really played anybody great yet, and they haven't been – they were much better this week, but the first game was a little shaky. Just a lot of unknowns still about Ole Miss. So, like a team like, for example, Michigan, they played a couple of cupcakes, but we know things about them. We know about this offense. We know about these players. Ole Miss has a lot of new faces, so we just don't know for sure how they're going to come together. Wake Forest, Sam Hartman is back, and this should be a top 25 team. How can we not rank them? There's just not enough spots. I don't know what to do. Who do I bump out? Syracuse, they've got a better win with their win over Louisville. And when it starts getting really close, do you have to just look at who they've beaten? Look at the resumes when you're trying to separate these teams, even though there's not much of a resume through 2 weeks. North Carolina and App State, I talked about them earlier. If you're going to rank Texas A&M, you have to rank these 2 teams ahead of them. Texas Tech 2-0. Purdue, even though they lost to Penn State, I've talked about it before. I thought that they looked like maybe the better team in that game. Minnesota, need to see them play a better team. NC State, like to see them play a conference game, see what they can do. Oregon State, let's see them play a better team. TCU, same thing. So I'm just watching these teams, not quite ready to rank them because, again, only 25 spots, but all 5 of these teams I think have potential to be top 25 teams here very, very soon. All right, let me have it. What do you think? My top 25, I know it's going to look a little bit different. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What would you change? Give me your top 25 down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.